that just reflected the mood of the morning, but I didn't think much of that. That was really, really very dour, wasn't it? But then it is called Blood Kiss. I suppose we should have realised what we were going to get. Well, the coronavirus has sapped the coffers. Government has lost a lot of money. It has spent a lot of money, a lot of our money, and of course they forget that, a lot of our money, and money which they borrow on our behalf. In the long run, we all have to pick up the tab, and it looks as if we're going to pick up the tab. Local councils now are finding that they don't have the cash to perform some of the tasks that they're supposed to perform. They're in a mess anyway. It's often said, and was said before the last election, the local government and governance was not fit for purpose. And certainly that seems to be our experience in Lewis. And it's the experience that colleagues and friends around the country have said about their own councils. Harvard University did a survey, said the shrinkage of local media has coincided with a rise in the cost, in other words the council tax, and in efficiency of the local council. They're not doing their job. They are actually very poor at their job. And that seems to be the evidence all around the country. But certainly we're reflecting that here. And now they can actually, because they're running out of cash, they can actually probe into our bank accounts. And that's frightening. That's absolutely frightening. We know that you can afford to pay this. Pay it now, and the courts are going to be jam-packed if they carry out their threat. Well, I love going to court with the council because actually they don't want all their misdemeanours heard. If you actually appeal, there are very limited things, right? They've been very clever. Is you don't pay your council tax. You can't go and say because I don't think that they're delivering the goods. You can't say things like that, or at least there's no defence. But the point is, if you go into court, of course, everything is on the record. So what they do is they have a little team. If you're summoned to court, they have a little team, and when you go, is they say, could we have a little discussion before we go into court in this side room? And in the side room they say, well, let's see if we can come to an agreement. And because they are terrified that what is recorded in court will show their incompetence. Now, you're not allowed to use that as a defence, but once things are blurted out in court, you can't erase them. There's no redacting. What we find is that these are the very areas in which the real truth comes out when it's not meant to. And that's what they're frightened of. So when they threaten to haul us into court, insist that you actually go into court before the magistrate. Don't let them talk you out of it beforehand. I've been there twice now, and I've let them talk me out of it. And of course, what happens is they break all their promises afterwards. You don't get any action at all. And then they say, "Oh, we didn't know, and we lost this." I had a letter from a lawyer, which I submitted. It was only to do with a change of house and so on and so forth, so that the right application of tax could be made. And they lost it. And then, having lost it, they asked me to replace it, and I went to the lawyer concerned and asked if they would mind making a photocopy, and they said no. And I said, how much that cost? And no, that's perfectly all right, it's just a copy. And I took it back again personally and gave it in at the front desk, and they lost it a second time. So they keep on saying there's no record of this. Well, at long last they've accepted that there must have been something there, because they don't want me to go back to the lawyer either. We're in dreadful shape. Governance in this country is in dreadful, dreadful shape. And I really, really am beginning to worry about exactly what's happening, and particularly if they can, at a whim, without reference to the electorate, without reference to their employers, us, can just simply have an exemption to a law by which everybody has to comply and which has been a real pain in the bum as far as commerce is concerned and almost everyday life, the Data Protection Act. And why? Because we rely upon computers, and computers are running the country. You speak to any politician or any civil servant and they say, "Don't rubbish, of course we've got no computers there to help us." No, they're not. Well, they are. But what's happened is that the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, and the dear old computer is getting on with it. You can speak to somebody and say, "Look, this is a situation." They say, "Oh, that's okay. Yeah, no, don't worry about it." And the next thing you know is you've got a letter that is spewed out by the computer. Because if they stop one of these letters going out, they've got to stop the whole lot. So the computer carries merrily on, issuing threats. And in the long run, if you get one of those letters, the fallback position of politicians and of civil servants is, "We sent you a letter, we warned you." "Ah, but I said, we agreed." Never mind, they don't care. It's a frightening situation. First of all, government can just spy on you when they feel like it because there is an exemption. And secondly, they don't know what the hell they're doing because the computer is slowly taking over. I had a chat. I actually had a demand and my phone cut off. My phone service cut off. Because I hadn't paid my bill. I checked my bank account, I'd paid my bill. I phoned. You used a little bit of extra data, and there is £3.50 which is owing. I said, "Oh God, here's a fiver, keep the change." But I talked to the lady and I said, "I don't like getting these nasty letters, and particularly for something like £2.50 when my overall bill is £70 and I pay it every week, every month." And she said, "Well, you know, the letters are sent out by the computer." I said, "Yeah, and nobody actually can stop the computer doing it, can they?" "No," she said, "we can't." So I got an admission, and then we started to talk about the service and how they look at things. And because of the computer, you can owe them 1 penny. 1 penny. And the computer will cut you off and send out the nasty letter. But she also said, she said, "While we're talking, I'll just restore your service because you've actually paid the bill right now," which I did with a card over the phone. At least you can do that. And I said, "But it says in the letter it'll take 48 hours to restore it." She said, "Yeah, that's the computer." She overrode it right then and there. I actually watched my service come back online. She pushed a button or whatever the hell she did, and she had the authority to do so. You know, it's all getting too much. I don't want to be governed by a computer. They are soulless. I want to be governed by human beings, not somebody whose only skill is to push a button and let the computer do it. I don't want people who can pry into my private life. I don't care which part of it is. And particularly those people who are always being caught by ordinary means and not exemptions to the law, nipping out of bed with people they shouldn't, doing things which are absolutely crooked, and they're the leaders. And how are they caught? Because of good, fine, honest endeavour by watchdogs whose job it is to make sure that councillors, MPs and so on stay on their toes. Oh, these people are masters at persuading the majority of people that those watchdogs, mostly in the media, are dreadful people. Can't trust the media anymore. They said it often enough, so now we can't. And actually, a lot of their legislation and the use of their computers has meant, yes, that there's been a weakening of the media. I'm the first to admit it, having been in it for a lifetime. But you know, it's amazing how, if you've got the power, you can actually consolidate that power by using stuff quite illegally. And then being mealy-mouthed enough to make it look as if you're the good guy, and everybody who says you shouldn't be doing it is the bad guy. History's full of it, but modern history is getting beyond that. It is breaking every rule and law that I was ever taught from the age of 4 when I first went to school in this country. And I'm appalled, and I'm fearful. Okay, I'm not going to be around for a lot much longer. But the fact of the matter is, we've got to be very careful for future generations that we don't create a life in which they fear for people listening in to everything they do. One of the things that the BBC did when it first really got its teeth into television, and believe me, there were some very innovative things on television in the early 1950s when television first came into the provinces. One of the innovative things that they did was they showed a drama about 1984, George Orwell's 1984, in which everybody was steered and guided by the state. And that was, Orwell said that was going to happen by 1984. Well, it's been delayed a bit. It's only happening in 2020, properly. But the state has become so all-powerful. I think it was Citizen Smith in 1984, who was tortured and watched, and is just an ordinary bloke, but gets so appalled by the way that the authorities can handle him that he rebels and fails to change the almighty state. I can see the day if we're not careful. And actually, there are some people that believe that it can happen today. Oh, if I say anything naughty against the government, somebody will come knocking on the door. And we used to happily say, oh no, that only happens behind the Iron Curtain. That only happens in Eastern Europe. Well, it's happening here now. We're getting very close to it. And if we don't watch it, and we don't actually rebel against this, instead of some of the things that we're marching against today and protesting against, then we're going to find ourselves as not only a herd, but a captive herd. Let's see if I can raise your spirits a little bit now, after all that, with a local group called Dandelion Charm and a piece called Skywalker.
It's a time